Let's pray. God, thank you so much for just a group of men and women as fellow believers here at Berean. God, you know that as a church, we continue to just seek your vision. And as a pastoral team and an elder board, Jesus, I know you've been speaking to us a lot. But God, I pray that you'd just really work that vision through all of us as a church. We want to seek your face. We want to walk the path that you have for us. And God, I know that you continue to develop leaders here among the believers at Berean, and we're so excited about that. We praise you for it. So God, would you be with our conversation here today? I pray that the questions, the answers, the thoughts we work through, we just commit to you. Thank you for the committed hearts here, and we just want to praise you for that. In Jesus' name, amen. So in reference to my prayer, I really mean that with all my heart. It's exciting to see so many of you here after the service, which is why we made it this time, so that it would be most convenient for all of you. So thank you for your willingness to stay and be part of this. We welcome your thoughts. I hope you've had time to look through the rolls in the back. I would just want to open up by saying, as a pastoral team, Dewey, myself, and Amy, and as an elder board, Sean and Ryan and Mose, we've been working on this a long time, for quite some time, working through the thought, the dream, the vision. But we realize that many of you may have not been aware that we've been working through this for the past year. So we simply want to be here with transparency, with as much as we can of openness. So we welcome the thoughts and the questions, again, the opinions, the ideas. We don't want to rush this as a church at all. So even though we've been working on it for quite a while, we want you guys to feel free to either catch up with where we are on it or slow us down till we get to where we all understand these clear roles. So if that makes sense, we have a number of mics up here. So you can either direct questions to either the elders and the pastors or just in general, and then we'll take turns answering. But we very much welcome all questions. I think we're just going to start with one row at a time. And if you have these papers with you, is great. If not, maybe you remember what you had or what you looked through. And I'll work through it, just a little bit of a detail of each role, and then we'll just open it up for questions. These are both roles that we would be looking to add to the pastoral team. Now, both of these roles, if you note on the defined role, we note that it would be up to possibly a year as an intern, which we would look at through that time. There'd be evaluations. We'd welcome you as a church, any one of you, to have input in those thoughts as we walk through the first year of this internship, to allow that the people that we put in these roles to just really work through are they a right fit for the role? Is the church okay with them filling the role, and we just work through that the first year. Before I go into any of those roles, though, I do just want to open it up. Pastors, elders, any comments before we get started? Are good? All right. So they're pleading the fifth up here. But if you have questions, feel free to direct to any. Does that make sense what we're going to do on these roles? All right. No one's nodding, but we're going to go ahead. So there's two roles that we're looking at adding. One is associate pastor and one is administrative pastor. Rather than necessarily work through detail by detail, I'll give you the comparison. So as an associate pastor, we're looking for someone to really work in the pastoral team side by side with myself, carry a lot of the same responsibilities as in secondary to myself as an associate. The objectives are in helping to preach at times, to leading outreach efforts with the outreach team, which Mose as an elder works as well, in the missions committee and the outreach. We want that person to be involved heavier with prayer and give more recognition and time for a prayer ministry. So that person would carry a very heavy role in leading that, as well as services as in baptism, discipleship program. One of the things as a church that's been on my heart for a long time, that I feel like I don't personally put enough of time into discipling our baptism applicants after baptism. So we want to put a lot more effort and energy into that with this role. as well as I mentioned, assistant preaching and mentoring. We are, in both of these roles, we're very intent that we would like to have continued training. So both of these roles are very heavy, and that training would continue not only through the next year of internship, but even beyond that. In comparison to the associate pastor, the other role is administrative pastor. We look this for more as logistics and administration. So working with structure in the family life groups, the focus groups, both of which Sean as an elder is heavily involved with as well. So they wouldn't necessarily take Sean's place in that, but rather work in coalition with Sean and bringing recognition to those groups, structuring that as we need. Also in working with the marriage enrichment ideas, and I know Eugene and Anna have been heavy in working with the marriage enrichment in Berlin. So working with them on orchestrating people to be able to get into that or whatever that looks like, that's in development. But we really want to put some more focus on our marriages at Berean. We want to look at that person very much being a part of our widows ministry. Here at Berean, we haven't done a real high recognition of our ministry among widows, so it's been something that's been heavy on our hearts as well. Along with working with Amy in kids ministry and even youth possibly of vetting volunteers. This person will be very heavily involved with recruiting and working with volunteers and leaders in the kids ministry. Assist in the pastoral care of the church at large as well as part of the pastoral team. So there'll be points of that as well. And then in addition to that, the working with the missions director on short-term mission trips. We want to make that a little bit more of an open, coordinated effort that this person would carry as well. And as well as possibly assistant preaching, and then again, heavy on the training for the intern. Now that's very shortened of what you probably read through. I hope you did. So I think with that, we are just going to open it up. Andre, do you have extra mics that you can hand to people that want to ask? So did that make sense of those different roles? And if it did, we welcome questions and thoughts. So we're simply going to open it up at that. Do not be shy, all right? There's a large group, but small in the fact that we're all family. So we just really welcome you to open it up at this point. Thought there might be an awkward silence. So any of you guys up here want to break that silence? Ryan, as head elder, I'm going to pick on you. Do you just want to give a little bit of a input of our journey through this as well?
Sure. I just want to say that, as many of you know, Steve has had a heavy workload for years, and he's done an amazing job at Berean. And I just know through talking through this on behalf of the elders and the pastoral team, everyone's been very, very much on the same page of trying to get Steve help and knowing that where the church is at and as much growth that we've had, that this is very vital to the church to continue to grow that pastoral team and share and not burn out Steve. You know, Steve's been doing this by himself for a long time, and just getting those roles in place, that he has someone at his side, and that we can grow some of these areas that we feel that we can grow within the church as well. So I just want to give a little update on that.
Okay, and with that, we'll have some more awkward silence unless someone has a question right away. So anybody? Do we have a mic over here, Andre? If one of you guys wants to be out here with a mic, or Joe, there you go. Alan over here, or Kobe's got one.
Hello. My question would be what are you thinking of for a discovery process? How do you go about finding this person? Are we looking within the church? Are we looking outside the church? Maybe both. So what are you guys thinking on that?
Very valid question. And we do have two people that have come forward and have felt the call for either of these roles. And to give you a little bit of background on that, both of these two men, we're okay with sharing their names. And they're intentionally not here today. because we felt like if there's discussion about that, the importance, though, that we want to make sure you guys are with us in is what we're very concerned about as a church is that we are very agreed on these roles without necessarily the defining person behind it. Next step will then be to put that person in as an internship. But two people have come forward over the last year just really feeling a calling to do ministry. One is Chris Reeser, and the other one is John Miller, as in John and Ina Miller. So both of them have felt a call to do ministry. And in that calling, we've discerned very two clear gifts. Even though we felt like these roles were needed already before they came forward to do ministry or having that desire or passion or burden to do ministry, as we interviewed them and walked through this process, we felt like it's very clearly defined that either of them would have different giftings. So with that thought in mind is we felt like to establish two clear roles, and then next step would be to put them in as an intern as that would work out. But again, the importance today is we welcome conversation on those two men, but the heaviest importance today is these two roles in defining that. Is that a fair statement, guys? Does that make sense, Alan? I don't know if you all know those names we gave. You probably all know John's have been here for a long time. Chris and Stephanie have been attending here and are members now for, I believe, a year, possibly. Chris has prior experience in ministry in the church she attended in Dover. They usually sit right here in the middle. And then John and Ina have been with the youth committee for 2 years now. Is that right, Kyle? 2 years? Okay, any other questions, thoughts? Thank you, Nate. That's one thing I failed to mention is through this process, we did take this to the advisory council first, which is our process of these kind of heavyweight decisions. So pastoral team, elder board, we spent quite a while working through these details and praying and crying out to God. And then we took it to the advisory council before we brought it here. So Nate, thanks for noting that as well. What I would see the process from here today is we're not going to make a final vote here today. We basically want a Q&A time, and then we may do a straw poll, something of that nature, but then over the next couple Sundays, we'll pick a Sunday to actually do a slip of vote out where you'll actually approve or disapprove. But that won't be done today. So today, again, we want to work through this process very clearly, very transparently. So today is very much a Q&A time as part of the process. Nate, thank you for that thought. We definitely don't want to stifle any thoughts and questions. On the same note, we're not going to keep you here a long time. I'm sure lunch is calling everybody. So if you have a question, if you have a thought, this is definitely your time to, we welcome that. There is no ignorant question. We want any kind of questions that may be on your mind.
I don't know if I need a mic or not, but anyway, Nate, absolutely on what you said, 100% agree. The only question I have is, like, after the 1 year, then would you, like, ordain this person, or? what would happen after his 1-year internship. And maybe it says I didn't even read the paper. My bad.
Thanks for your honesty, Bruce. No, we weren't very clear of that in the paper in your note. The process would be the 1-year internship, and then we would look at that being a permanent role. We haven't decided if that would be ordination in the ministry or a commissioning, which Dewey and Amy work under. So Dewey and Amy are both commissioned as pastors, but haven't been ordained, so to speak. So we would now, Dewey is commissioned as a, Dewey, can I say this? He does weddings. He's commissioned as a, anyway, so he's commissioned as a pastor to do weddings, but they are commissioned, but not necessarily ordained. So we haven't walked through that note yet of whether these two would be ordained or if it would first go into a commissioning role, but it would go into a role without terms at that point most likely. Is that correct, guys?
Just to clear it up, we had talked about, just so everyone knows as well, I think we had put on with that 1-year internship that we would have quarterly evaluations through this. So I'm sure you guys could ask questions, after that, or just to make sure that we're on the same page on that as well.
The thing we've been conscious of too is through those evaluations and through that first year, we really want the whole church to be part of that evaluation. And it might be something where we'd say, hey, it makes more sense for just one person to merge this role, where it might be saying they might come to where this is a heavy load for 2 people to carry. We're just going to walk through that really slowly and carefully, I believe. Wait, no, go ahead. Did that answer it all? I don't see, I think we all agreed. We put a very clear defining role for myself that is already happening. So I've been very conscious that I work through those evaluations from the elder board as well. But we don't really see my role change more, just that I would get help in basically all I do. But then a few things that I'm not doing that I've, again, just being transparent, I felt guilty about that would be covered. Primarily in more discipling and mentoring, especially around baptism and evangelism, prayer time. So more of an expansion of my role that they would fill rather than necessarily taking away from it. Is that fair, guys? With the added thought of it would make it probably more clearly defined on schedule of preaching, at least as we develop, to where maybe that would be quarterly, maybe it would be monthly, but we'd work through that over the next number of years.
Are you set on just the 2 people who you have picked out, or is there an opportunity for anyone here yet who does feel the need for, or who does have the call to help, to still be in for these positions?
So I'd love the input of you elders, any of you, Dewey and Amy as well. Currently, we have the 2 that have come forward with a calling. But we have very much discussed and agreed that if someone else has that call, we would welcome that, and then we'd work through an interview process with that. We've already worked through the majority of the interview process with Chris and John, but that's not to say that that's necessarily 100% given deal that they would fill the internship. So, yeah, in answer to your question, Jason, I feel like we would definitely, if someone has that call, we would welcome that interview process with them. Is that fair?
Is there a timeline as to when the internship starts?
And not really, because we were very conscious of the fact, again, like I mentioned earlier, we've been working through this quite a while, but we know to some of you here as the body in Berean, you may have not heard about this till 2 weeks ago. So if we're all agreed and within a week or 2 we'd make that approval, then we could possibly fill those roles within the next 2 to 3 months. If it would take us longer to work through these roles and approving of these, then it may be fall or end of summer. This is probably a good time to announce as well, is it? that I have requested a month sabbatical this summer from the Elder Board, and they have answered that I would be welcome to do that. So the month of July, I plan to be on a short 4-week sabbatical. Now, these two roles don't necessarily need to be in place for that sabbatical. We do have people in place and that schedule filled without these two people in the role. So if you hear the next couple of weeks of me announcing to the church at large of that sabbatical, don't feel like this is being rushed for that. That's not the case. Does that answer your question, Kobe? All right, any other questions, thoughts? That's a very good question. So that came up in the advisory council as well. The first year of internship, we're not looking that it would affect the budget at all. After that internship, if we would fill both of these roles permanently, we would look at it at some kind of possibly pretty much the same kind of role that Dewey and Amy are filling as far as compensation. So, I mean, maybe that's a question for Ryan and head of finance, but I would feel like at that point we'd have to make that decision of where that would fall into budget. Ryan, maybe I'll let you speak into that from treasurer.
Yeah, and I know it's one of those things where we can't totally define exactly how that compensation looks and exactly, since we are doing a year internship, to see will both roles stay the way they will after a year? Will it go down to one? Will it, how does that look exactly? And how much will they do of each of their roles? So I think after that year we'll probably have a better idea on how that looks, for sure.
Anybody else? Is there anything that we haven't made clear, or that if you've worked through the roles that you're not clear on of how we've established the roles in the papers, in the defined role descriptions? Okay, we're not going to keep you long. We'll give a quick chance here, then we'll do a straw poll of whether or not you feel like we're okay on taking a vote over the next couple of weeks, or if you want more time. So that's the straw poll we're going to do. If we can move ahead over the next couple of weeks of making this an official approval or disapproval, or if you feel like we should take more time to this. So that's going to be the straw poll. But before we do that, any more questions?
Something that you do for them, or is that through Rosedale or a conference?
We look at that as a combination a little bit. We're looking at having a course that we would work through with that person, that Fridays they could work with here, as well as prayer, discernment time with myself. One of the things I'm very conscious of is I want to spend a lot of time with these men and just really seeking God's face through the week, whatever that looks like. If their work schedule allows a Thursday or a Wednesday rather than a Friday, so the day of the week I'm not as concerned about is the time. But then in addition to that, we'll walk hand in hand with that additional training, whether it's a Moody Bible College course or a Rosedale course. But yeah, definitely that training. That would be, the question came on up of that as well with the applicants that we have so far, the nominees, of what that looks like cost-wise. We've all agreed that we want anyone that takes on the role of pastoring to have some personal investment. I believe that's important, that any one of us that works through leadership has some personal investment, but there may be some work that the church could do as well in helping that cost of training. So sort of that combination. Does that answer that question? Yeah, definitely. We would definitely look at working with these individuals on online training. But then, in addition to that, for instance, next week there's a number of us going to a pastors' conference or leadership conference in Texas. We leave Tuesday morning, so we would want these guys to be part of that as well. So online training, but then also as a group together. And some of the thing with the on-group conference style is even the bond it creates on leaders. Myself and Kyle and Ruben and Kathy. There's a number of us going next week, and it creates an opportunity for us to really share vision together and work together on conversation and bonding. So it'd be the combination of something online as well as with that. Anything else? We don't want to rush you, but on the same token, we don't want to draw this out. So, but I'm very conscious of, and I'm going to be just really clear about this, is if you have questions, we want you to ask them. Again, there's no ignorant question. What I would feel disheartened about is if you sit here quietly and then directly after dismissal have questions. So now you're going to feel guilty if you're that person, but really, I want you to ask them now. You're very welcome to ask them.
Okay. I just wanted to say that one of the things that I'm most excited about both of these positions is just the opportunity to kind of what the message was on today about relationships. We have so many newcomers coming who have yet to feel that connection, and then also those who have been attending for a while and aren't plugged in anywhere, whether that's with the ushers or kids ministry or women's Bible study. But I think both of these roles are very clear that they would both be focused, or that would be part of their responsibilities, would be to kind of bridge those relationships. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's very, very true, Amy. And to Amy's point, one of our concerns is I think a full leadership team, whether it's the elders or the pastors, is we want availability. And at this point, you guys all know that I'm not full-time, I'm bivocational. At this point, we see our continued pastoral team to be a bivocational team. The pros and cons with that are part of it. But with that being bivocational, the availability to be accessible to everybody, to added into that group just brings more availability for that networking. So, good point, Amy. Okay, anyone else? Real quickly? If not, we're going to get ready to do a straw poll, and the straw poll will be this, of yes or no, whether we're ready to move forward with this in the next couple weeks. We need to decide whether that would be next Sunday or the following, that we would actually put a slip of paper out as a vote, and you would vote and put it in the offering basket. That's how that'll look, not the basket, but in the back. But if the straw poll will be if you feel like we're ready to move ahead with that in the next couple weeks, or if you feel like we should take more time. Does that make sense? That's what the straw poll will be about. But any questions before we take that straw poll? Okay, this is not a confidential thing necessarily. This is just a real quick, candid transparency, right? So we're just going to ask all of those you feel we're ready to move forward in the next couple weeks of taking a vote. Just raise your hands as an eye of saying yes, we're ready to move forward with taking the approval vote. Okay, and by the way, we're not voting up here not because we disagree, but because we didn't know to vote, right? Including myself. Those of you that feel like we need to take more time in a couple months to this, feel free to raise your hand. Okay. All right, and as candid I was as about continued questions, don't feel badly in the next couple of weeks. If you want to call or text any of us as pastors, as elders, again, we want to be very transparent with this, open, very clear communication. So we just want to keep that, bridging that gap. Before we close, though, and let you go, we do have, some of you know, we've been developing and working with the next phase of a building process. very heavy on the auction of where we've come to this weekend. And by the way, I think you all know this, but we've been very excited that as of the end of last year, all of our mortgages are paid off, and we're now working towards whatever that next process looks like. And there is a committee in place. So I'm going to let Ryan just give you a real quick update of what that looks like and what we're doing with that.
I'll make it real quick. So, as most of you know, we were working on looking at potentially in the future adding a gymnasium. And so we've been working with Tecton. Bruce is the leader of that group. So I'll just give a brief update. If you have more questions, definitely feel free to ask Bruce as well. But there's an opening coming up that they're going to work on at least some ideas for us. Kind of the two things we need to really get it to you guys as a church is simply what are some of the ideas it could look like here, and then two, we need to start getting pricing so we can look at it and plan. So the hope is to kind of have some of those plans and ideas together this spring into summer, and we would like to be starting getting quotes this fall so that by the fourth quarter or so that we can as a church start making decisions of how that looks in the future. So just a brief update where we're going with that. It always seems like it takes a lot of time. We would like it to be moving quicker so we can get at least something to you guys, but it's going to take another couple months to kind of get some ideas that we can present. So any questions on that, ask Bruce. I can answer some as well, but yeah, just wanted to do a quick update. And kind of to your question, Drew, earlier is, as Steve mentioned, you know, with us being debt-free as a church, a lot of those decisions financially will also, you know, come up at the end of the year with the building and adding two roles like this. So a lot of that will take play in our budget as well. But yeah, we'll be more in touch with that.
And just as an added detail on that, for instance, the auction that we just had last weekend, as well as we are continued to have a percentage in our budget that goes to building fund. So Lori, as treasurer, is working with, you know, that fund in being established and continuing to grow. So just don't think that we're not already working through the next phase for that, even though we don't have a mortgage to pay. So all of that is, you know, done through the decisions of the advisory council and those steps. So that is in place as well. Is that fair to say, Ryan? All right. All right, we really appreciate your time. I want to give a big thank you to Dewey, Amy, each one of the elders, Mose and Ryan and Sean. We've prayed, cried, toiled a lot on this, and it's really exciting and encouraging to see all of you here today and being part of this process with us. Thank you for your support, and we really, again, appreciate you being here. So with that, you're dismissed.